What happens when a beloved morning television host pushes too far and a royal guest reaches his breaking point? The answer unfolded live on air in what can only be described as one of the most explosive interviews in British television history. Before we get into exactly what was said that made Prince Harry storm off-set, make sure you're subscribed to this channel and drop a comment below telling me what you think really happened here. Now, let's get into it. The interview started innocently enough. Lorraine Kelly, known for her warm demeanor and friendly approach, welcomed Prince Harry onto her iconic yellow sofa with her trademark smile. The Duke of Sussex, dressed in a sharp navy suit, settled into his seat with what appeared to be cautious optimism. The initial topic was his upcoming charity work, a safe subject that both parties seemed comfortable discussing. "It's wonderful to have you here," Lorraine began, her Scottish accent as welcoming as ever. "You've been doing some incredible work with veterans, and I think everyone watching would love to hear more about what you've got planned." Harry nodded, seemingly at ease. "Thank you for having me, Lorraine. Yes, the work we're doing with injured veterans is something I'm deeply passionate about. These men and women have sacrificed so much, and I believe we owe them more than just our gratitude. We owe them genuine support, real resources, and a pathway to rebuild their lives." The conversation flowed smoothly for the first several minutes. Lorraine asked thoughtful questions about specific programs, and Harry responded with genuine enthusiasm. Sharing anecdotes about veterans he'd met and the transformative impact of the initiatives, the studio audience seemed engaged, and there was an air of positivity that suggested this would be a standard, heartwarming interview. But then, Lorraine shifted gears. "You know, Harry, I think what people really admire is how you've carved out your own path," she said, her tone still friendly, but with a slight edge that hadn't been there before. "You've made choices that not everyone in your position would make. Some might even say you've broken with tradition in ways that have surprised people." Harry's expression flickered, just for a moment. "I suppose that's one way to look at it," he replied carefully. "I prefer to think of it as trying to live authentically and protect the people I love." Of course, Lorraine continued, leaning forward slightly. "But surely you can understand why some people feel conflicted about how things have unfolded. Your family has given so much to this country, and there are those who feel that walking away from royal duties, while simultaneously maintaining certain privileges and titles, sends a mixed message." The atmosphere in the studio shifted. You could feel the tension rising. Harry straightened in his seat, his jaw tightening just slightly. "I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding about what actually happened," he said, his voice measured but noticeably cooler. "We didn't walk away from service. We stepped back from an institution that wasn't willing to protect my wife and son from targeted harassment and racism." Lorraine raised her eyebrows. "Strong words, Harry, but don't you think that by speaking so publicly about private family matters, you've actually intensified the scrutiny rather than escaped it? Some would argue that doing interviews, writing books, making documentaries, all of that keeps you in the very spotlight you claim to want to avoid." "With respect, Lorraine, that's not a fair characterization," Harry responded, his composure starting to crack. "We were forced into a position where our side of the story was being completely misrepresented. The media created a narrative that was damaging not just to us, but dangerous. When you have newspapers printing lies that lead to death threats against your family, staying silent isn't noble, it's irresponsible." "I understand that's your perspective," Lorraine said, her tone remaining conversational but persistent. "But Harry, you have to admit that not everything has been lies. Some of the criticism has come from your own words, your own admissions. The revelations in your book, for instance, about private conversations with your brother, with your father. Many people, even those who sympathize with your position, felt that crossed a line." Harry's face flushed. "What crossed a line was the way my wife was treated from day one. What crossed a line was watching history repeat itself. Watching the same people who contributed to my mother's death try to do the same thing to my wife. And being told by my own family to just accept it, to not make waves. To protect an institution over protecting my family. No one is saying your concerns aren't valid," Lorraine interjected. But Harry was warming up now, his voice rising. "Actually, that's exactly what people have been saying. For years, we were told to just take it, that it was part of the job, that we needed to keep calm and carry on while newspapers printed vicious, racist attacks on my wife. And when we finally said enough is enough, when we finally chose our mental health and our safety over outdated protocols, We were vilified for it. Lorraine paused, letting his words hang in the air. Then she pressed on. But Harry, and I'm asking this genuinely, don't you see how it appears to people watching from the outside? You've spoken about wanting privacy, wanting to be left alone, yet you've done multiple high-profile interviews, a Netflix series, written a best-selling memoir. You've shared intimate details about your family, while asking for that same family to respect your boundaries. Can you understand why that seems contradictory? What's contradictory? Harry said, his voice sharp now. Is being told that I should just accept abuse because I was born into a certain family. What's contradictory is a media that demands access to every aspect of our lives and then criticizes us when we try to set the record straight on our own terms. Setting the record straight is one thing. Lorraine countered, her journalist instincts clearly taking over. But some of the things you've shared, revealing private conversations, discussing family disputes publicly, those choices have consequences too, don't they? Your brother, your father, they can't respond without creating more drama, more headlines. Doesn't that put them in an impossible position? Harry stood up slightly, then caught himself and sat back down, visibly trying to control his emotions. You want to talk about impossible positions? Try being told that your wife's suicidal thoughts aren't important enough to warrant support from the institution. Try being told that your son won't receive security because of arbitrary decisions about who deserves protection. Try watching the woman you love being torn apart daily by a press that has learned nothing from what happened to my mother. Lorraine's expression softened momentarily, but she didn't back down. Harry, I think everyone watching has tremendous sympathy for what you went through losing your mother. And no one wants to see history repeat itself. But do you not think that perhaps some of the attention, some of the difficulties you've faced have been amplified by the way you've chosen to handle things? If privacy was truly the goal, there were quieter ways to step back. Harry shook his head firmly. You're missing the entire point. We tried the quiet way. We tried working within the system. We tried asking for help, for support, for basic human decency. And we were met with silence, with bureaucracy, with people more concerned about protecting an image than protecting actual human beings. So yes, when that didn't work, we had to make noise. We had to make sure people understood what was really happening. And I respect that, Lorraine said, though her tone suggested she was building to something. But Harry, you have to acknowledge that you've benefited enormously from the very institution you're now criticizing. The education, the opportunities, the platform you have to do good work. All of that came from being a royal. Don't you think there's a responsibility that comes with that privilege? Harry's eyes flashed with anger. Privilege. Is that what you think this is about? Let me tell you about privilege, Lorraine. Privilege is having a security team that actually responds when there are credible threats. Privilege is having the institution's lawyers fight to protect your reputation instead of throwing you to the wolves. Privilege is not having to choose between your family's safety and your birthright. But you do still use your title, Lorraine pointed out. You are still the Duke of Sussex. You still benefit from the association with the royal family, even while criticizing it. Surely you can see how that looks to people. What would you have me do? Harry shot back. Erase my entire history. Pretend I wasn't born into this family. The title is part of who I am, but it doesn't define my worth or dictate my choices. I can acknowledge where I come from while still demanding better from the institution that comes with it. Lorraine leaned back slightly, her voice taking on a more probing quality. Let me ask you something that I think a lot of people wonder about. Do you have any regrets? About the interviews, the book, the revelations? Do you ever think that maybe some things should have stayed private? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Harry was silent for a moment, clearly wrestling with how to respond. Of course I have regrets, he finally said, his voice lower, but no less intense. I regret that I ever had to make these choices in the first place. I regret that speaking our truth hurt people I care about. But what I don't regret is protecting my wife and son. I don't regret prioritizing their well-being over public perception or institutional comfort. That's a diplomatic answer, Lorraine observed. But it doesn't really answer the question, does it? Specifically, do you regret sharing private conversations with William, with your father? Do you regret some of the more personal revelations that didn't necessarily serve the larger narrative about press intrusion and racism? Harry's patience was visibly wearing thin. Every single thing I shared for a reason. To give context, to show the pattern of behavior, to illustrate how deep the problems run. Were some of those details uncomfortable? Yes. Did they need to be said? I believe they did. But Harry, context to you might feel like betrayal to them, Lorraine pressed. William hasn't spoken publicly about any of this. Your father has remained silent. They're following the traditional royal approach of never complain, never explain. Doesn't their restraint make your openness seem, well, one-sided? Their silence isn't restraint, Lorraine. It's complicity, Harry said, his voice rising again. Staying quiet while the press prints lies isn't dignity, it's cowardice. And I'm sorry, but I won't apologize for refusing to play that game anymore. The audience was completely silent now, riveted by the increasingly heated exchange. Lorraine, sensing she had hit a nerve, continued, strong words. But let me push back on something. You talk about the press printing lies, but you've also admitted to things that you then seem upset about when people react to them. You admitted to drug use, to killing people during your military service, to physical altercations with your brother. These weren't things the press made up. These were your words. And when people responded with shock or criticism, you seemed surprised. What did you expect? Harry looked genuinely incredulous. I expected people to understand that I was trying to be honest, to be human, to show that everyone struggles with things. The drug use was about coping with trauma. The discussion about my military service was about the reality of combat, not glorifying violence. The incident with William was about showing how bad things had gotten, how toxic the environment was. Or, Lorraine said carefully, it was about selling books. I'm sorry to be blunt, Harry, but that's what some people think. That all of this, the revelations, the interviews, the documentary, it's been as much about commercial success as it is about setting any record straight. The words hit like a slap. Harry's face went rigid. How dare you, he said quietly, his voice trembling with barely controlled fury. How dare you suggest that I exploited my family's pain, my mother's death, my wife's suffering, for money? Do you have any idea how insulting that is? I'm not suggesting it, Harry. I'm telling you what people are saying, Lorraine replied, maintaining her composure. And as uncomfortable as it is, isn't this the conversation you opened yourself up to by going public? If you're going to speak openly, you have to be prepared for people to question your motives. My motive is survival, Harry said, his voice shaking. My motive is protecting my family from the same forces that killed my mother. If I made money from telling my story, it's because that's how the world works. Should I have shared everything for free? Would that have made it more legitimate in your eyes? It might have made it seem less calculated, Lorraine said. When you're doing deals with streaming services worth millions, when you're signing book contracts, when every revelation seems timed for maximum impact, it starts to look less like self-defense and more like self-promotion. Harry stood up abruptly, his hands clenched at his sides. This is exactly what I'm talking about. No matter what I do, no matter how I try to explain, people like you twist it into something ugly. I came here to talk about veterans, about charity work, about making a difference. And you've turned this into an interrogation about my family, my choices. My character. You had to know these questions were coming, Lorraine said, remaining seated but looking up at him steadily. This is what interviews are, Harry. People want to understand. They want answers. And if you're not prepared to give them without getting angry, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews at all. Maybe you're right, Harry said, his voice cold. Maybe I shouldn't waste my time trying to explain myself to people who have already made up their minds. People who are more interested in gotcha moments than actual understanding. That's not fair, Lorraine protested. I've asked you direct questions, the same questions millions of people want answered. If you can't handle that, if you can't defend your choices without accusing me of having an agenda, then perhaps the problem isn't with the questions. The problem, Harry said, pointing his finger, is that you're sitting there acting like you're just asking innocent questions, when really you're parroting the same tired criticisms that have been weaponized against me and my family for years. Lorraine stood up now, facing him directly. I am doing my job, Harry. My job is to ask the questions that viewers want answered. If you find those questions uncomfortable, that's not my fault. You've put yourself in this position by being so public about everything. You can't have it both ways. You can't share every intimate detail of your life and then get upset when people want to discuss it. Harry's laugh was bitter, almost harsh. You think this is about being uncomfortable? This is about being ambushed. You invited me here to discuss charity work, veterans, things that actually matter. And instead, you've spent the entire interview trying to paint me as some kind of hypocrite or opportunist. That's not journalism, Lorraine. That's a hit job. A hit job. Lorraine's voice rose for the first time, genuine offense creeping in. I have been nothing but respectful. I have given you every opportunity to explain yourself, to clarify your position. If you don't like the questions, if you don't like having to justify your actions, then maybe you need to ask yourself why that is. Maybe the problem isn't with everyone else, Harry. Maybe it's with the choices you've made. The studio was electric with tension. You could see members of the crew exchanging glances, unsure whether to intervene. Harry's face was flushed, his breathing heavy. You want to know what the problem is? The problem is that people like you have decided that I'm the villain in this story. That somehow wanting to protect my wife, wanting to give my son a normal life, wanting to speak the truth about what really happened, makes me the bad guy. Meanwhile, the institution that enabled racism, that protected abusers, that prioritized image over humanity, they get to hide behind tradition and protocol. No one is saying the institution is perfect, Lorraine countered. But Harry, you're not exactly approaching this with balance either. You've made serious accusations, you've damaged relationships, you've caused enormous pain to your family. And for what? What has all of this actually accomplished, besides making you and your wife famous in a different way? Harry's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. Famous in a different way. My wife has been suicidal because of the abuse she's endured. My son will grow up reading vicious lies about his mother. I've been estranged from my family because I chose them over an institution. But sure, Lorraine, let's reduce all of that to fame. Let's pretend that this has been some kind of calculated publicity stunt rather than the most painful period of my life. Then why keep doing interviews? Lorraine demanded. If it's so painful, if the scrutiny is so unbearable, why keep putting yourself through this? Why keep rehashing everything? Why not just live your life quietly and let things settle down? Because it doesn't settle down, Harry shot back. Because every day there are new lies, new attacks, new attempts to rewrite history. Because my son deserves to know the truth about what happened, not the sanitized version that protects people who should be held accountable. Because silence hasn't protected anyone in my family, it's only ever protected the institution. Lorraine shook her head. You keep talking about the institution like it's some separate entity, but Harry, it's your family. Your grandmother dedicated her entire life to it. Your father has waited decades to serve. Your brother is preparing to eventually lead it. When you attack the institution, you're attacking them. You can't separate the two. Maybe that's the problem, Harry said. Maybe the fact that we can't separate the people from the institution is exactly why it needs to change. My grandmother was an incredible woman, but that doesn't mean the system she upheld was perfect. My father has suffered under the weight of expectations too. William is trapped in a role he can't escape. Maybe instead of defending a broken system, we should be honest about its flaws. And you get to be the one who decides what's broken, Lorraine challenged. You get to be the arbiter of what needs fixing. That sounds awfully convenient, Harry. It sounds like someone who wants to tear down what he couldn't control. Harry's eyes widened. Couldn't control? You think this is about control? I gave up everything, Lorraine. I gave up my home, my family, my role, my security. I gave up the only life I'd ever known because staying would have destroyed us. That's not about control. That's about survival. Or it's about not getting your way, Lorraine said sharply. You wanted the institution to change for you, to bend the rules for you, and when they didn't, you walked away and have spent years trying to burn it down from the outside. That's how it looks to a lot of people. Harry took a step toward her. You have no idea what you're talking about. You have no idea what it's like to watch someone you love contemplating suicide because of relentless abuse. You have no idea what it's like to beg for help and be told that protecting the institution's reputation is more important than protecting a human life. You have no idea what it's like to be gaslit by your own family while they brief against you to the press. Then help me understand, Lorraine said, her voice softer now but still probing. Help me understand why sharing private text messages, why revealing conversations that were meant to be confidential, why airing every grievance publicly helps anything. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've created more pain than you've resolved. Of course you'd see it that way, Harry said bitterly. Of course the person who's never had to fight for their basic dignity, who's never had their wife called names in newspapers, who's never had their child's security threatened over bureaucratic nonsense. Of course, you'd think I should have just stayed quiet. It's easy to judge from the outside. I'm not judging, I'm questioning, Lorraine insisted. And Harry, you have to know that's going to happen. You've opened this door. You've invited scrutiny by being so public. If you can't handle that, if every difficult question makes you this angry, then maybe you need to step back and reconsider your approach. My approach. Harry's voice was rising again. My approach is honesty. My approach is refusing to let lies stand unchallenged. My approach is putting my family first, always. If that makes people uncomfortable, if that disrupts the carefully managed narrative, then so be it. But at what cost? Lorraine pressed. You've lost your relationship with your brother. You barely speak to your father. You've been cut off from the family. Was it worth it? Is this new life, with all its freedom, worth everything you've lost? Harry stared at her, his jaw working. That's not a fair question. Why not? Lorraine challenged. You've made your choices. Now you live with the consequences. I'm asking if you think it was worth it. It's a simple question. Nothing about this is simple, Harry said through gritted teeth. And the fact that you think it is shows how little you understand. My family was already broken, Lorraine. The institution broke it long before I said a word publicly. I didn't destroy those relationships. I just stopped pretending they weren't already damaged. So everyone else is to blame, Lorraine said. The institution, the media, your family, everyone except you. Is that really what you believe? Harry's hands were shaking now. I believe I did what I had to do. I believe I protected the people who matter most. And I believe that people like you will never understand because you've never had to make impossible choices. Oh, come off it, Lorraine said, her Scottish temper finally showing. Everyone has difficult choices, Harry. You don't have a monopoly on suffering. The difference is, most people don't get book deals and Netflix specials to process their family drama. Most people deal with it privately, with dignity. That was the breaking point. Harry's face went pale, then red. Dignity. You want to lecture me about dignity? Where was the dignity when newspapers published racist cartoons of my wife? Where was the dignity when they speculated about our son's skin color? Where was the dignity when they printed lies that led to death threats? But sure, I'm the one lacking dignity because I fought back. You didn't just fight back, you scorched earth, Lorraine retorted. And now you're angry because people are asking you to account for it. Harry ripped off his microphone, the sound crackling through the speakers. I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm done with you. I'm done with all of it. His voice was raw with emotion. You invited me here under false pretenses. You've spent this entire interview attacking me, and now you're acting like I'm the unreasonable one. This is exactly why we left. This is exactly why we can't trust anyone in this country. Harry, sit down, Lorraine said, but her voice had lost its edge, replaced with something closer to concern. We're having a conversation. No, we're not, Harry said, already moving toward the edge of the set. You're ambushing me, and I won't sit here and be lectured about my choices by someone who's never walked a day in my shoes. He turned back to face her one last time. You can sit there in your comfortable studio with your comfortable life and judge me all you want. But you have no idea what it takes to break free from a system designed to break you. None of you do. So there you have it. One of the most explosive interviews ever broadcast. Ending with a member of the royal family walking off set in the middle of filming. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and drop a comment below. What do you think? Did Lorraine cross a line, or was she just doing her job as a journalist? Let me know your thoughts.